A 34-year-old woman was dying of cancer. She had one last wish to dance with Madonna, but her body was too weak to stand. What Madonna did instead became the most heartbreaking performance of her life. October 2019. Sarah Mitchell was lying in a hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, and she was out of time. Stage 4 metastatic breast cancer had spread to her bones, her lungs, her liver. The doctors had stopped using words like treatment and remission. Now they only talked about comfort, about pain management, about making the end as peaceful as possible. Sarah was 34 years old. She'd been fighting cancer for 6 years, minus 6 years of chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, clinical trials, hope followed by devastation, followed by more hope, that always ended in devastation. She'd lost her hair 4 times. She'd lost her ability to walk without assistance. She'd lost her job, her savings, and her fiancé who'd left 2 years into her diagnosis because he couldn't handle watching her die. But through all of it, through every brutal treatment, every crushing piece of bad news, every moment when giving up seemed easier than going on, Sarah had one constant: Madonna's music. She'd discovered Madonna at 8 years old, watching the Vogue music video at her grandmother's house. Something about the way Madonna moved, the confidence, the absolute refusal to apologize for taking up space. It ignited something in little Sarah that never went out. Through middle school bullying, through her parents' divorce, through every hard moment of her life, Madonna's music had been there. And when she was diagnosed with cancer at 28, Sarah made a playlist of Madonna songs that she played during every chemotherapy session. Express Yourself for Courage, Like a Prayer for Hope, Hung Up for when she needed to remember that time was precious. The nurses at the oncology center knew her as the Madonna girl. She'd decorated her chemo room with Madonna posters. She'd worn different Madonna tour shirts to every treatment. On her worst days, when the poison pumping through her veins made her want to die, just to make it stop, she'd put in her headphones and let Madonna remind her that she was stronger than she felt. But now, in October 2019, there were no more treatments, no more hope, just time running out, and a body that was shutting down piece by piece. Sarah's younger sister Rachel had moved into the hospital room. She slept on a cot next to Sarah's bed, held her hand through the pain, helped her to the bathroom when she could still make that journey, and stayed up all night talking when the pain was too bad for sleep. One night, 3 weeks before Sarah died, Rachel asked the question everyone asks when they know the end is coming. Is there anything you want to do? Anything at all? I'll make it happen. I don't care how impossible it seems. Sarah was quiet for a long time. The morphine made her thoughts slow and fuzzy. But then she said something that broke Rachel's heart. I want to dance with Madonna. Rachel almost laughed because it was so impossible. But then she saw Sarah's face, the absolute sincerity, the desperate hope, and she understood. This wasn't a joke. This was the last thing Sarah wanted in the world. Sarah, honey, I don't know if I know I can't dance, Sarah interrupted, and her voice cracked. I know my body doesn't work anymore, but I've listened to her music through everything, every hard moment, every time I wanted to give up, and I'm going to die without ever seeing her, without ever thanking her, without ever. She couldn't finish. She was crying too hard. Rachel held her sister and made a promise she had no idea how to keep. I'll try. I promise. I'll try. The next morning, Rachel started making calls. She contacted Madonna's management company, her publicist, her fan club, her charity foundation, anyone she could find a number for. She sent emails, direct messages on social media, letters through overnight mail. She explained the situation. Her sister was dying. This was her last wish. They didn't need tickets to a concert or anything elaborate. Just 5 minutes. Just a chance for Sarah to meet the person whose music had carried her through the hardest years of her life. For 2 weeks, nothing. No responses. No callbacks. Nothing. Rachel was sitting in Sarah's hospital room watching her sister sleep, feeling like she'd failed the one person who'd never asked her for anything, when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Rachel Mitchell?" The voice was professional, efficient. "Yes, this is Rachel. I'm calling on behalf of Madonna. We received your messages about your sister." Rachel's heart stopped. "You did? Madonna would like to visit Sarah. Tomorrow evening, if that works. She's in Los Angeles for meetings, and she has a few hours available, but we need to be discreet. No press, no photos released publicly, just a private visit." Rachel was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Yes, yes. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you." She hung up and looked at her sister, who was awake now, watching her with those huge eyes that the illness had made even bigger in her thin face. "Sarah," Rachel whispered, "Madonna is coming here. Tomorrow, she's coming to see you." Sarah didn't believe it. She couldn't let herself believe it. But Rachel showed her the email confirmation, the non-disclosure agreement she had to sign, the specific instructions about timing and privacy. It was real. Madonna was coming. The next day was the longest day of Sarah's life. Every hour felt like a week. She was terrified she'd die before Madonna arrived. She was terrified the visit would be cancelled. She was terrified this was all a dream, and she'd wake up to find out none of it was real. Rachel helped Sarah wash her hair. What little had grown back. They picked out Sarah's favorite Madonna shirt, the one from the Rebel Heart tour that Sarah had bought, but never got to wear to a concert because she'd been too sick. Rachel did Sarah's makeup, trying to hide the sickly yellow tint the liver failure had given her skin, trying to make her sister look like herself instead of like someone dying. At 6 p.m., there was a quiet knock on the hospital room door. Rachel opened it, and there she was. Madonna, smaller than she looked in photos, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. No makeup team, no entourage, just her and one assistant. She walked into the room, and her eyes went straight to Sarah in the bed. And Sarah, who'd been so worried about what to say, about how to thank this person who'd meant so much to her, could only whisper, "You're really here." Madonna smiled, and it was the saddest, gentlest smile Rachel had ever seen. "I'm really here, sweetheart." She walked to the bed and sat down on the edge, right next to Sarah. She took Sarah's hand, and Sarah burst into tears. Not polite tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole fragile body. Madonna didn't do what most people do when someone cries, try to fix it, try to make it stop. She just held Sarah's hand and let her cry. When Sarah could finally speak, she said, I'm sorry, your music saved my life so many times. Every time I wanted to give up, every time the treatment was too hard, every time I thought I couldn't do it anymore, I'd put on your songs and they'd remind me to keep fighting." Madonna's eyes filled with tears. "Tell me your favorite song." "Like a Prayer," Sarah said immediately. "I played it before every surgery. It made me feel less alone." Madonna nodded, and Rachel could see she was struggling to keep her composure. "That's the song that saved me too. When I wrote it, I was going through something really hard, and I needed to believe something better was coming." They talked for an hour, not about cancer, not about dying, but about music and dance, and life, and all the things Sarah had dreamed about doing. The trip to Paris she'd never take, the wedding she'd never have, the children she'd never raise. Madonna listened to every word like it was the most important thing she'd ever heard. Then Sarah said something that changed everything. She looked at Madonna with those enormous eyes and whispered, "I know I asked to dance with you, but I can't. I can't even stand up anymore. I'm sorry I wasted your time with an impossible wish." Madonna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Who says you need to stand up to dance?" Before Sarah or Rachel understood what she meant, Madonna stood up and started moving the hospital equipment, carefully, gently, creating a small space next to the bed. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her music, and found something. The opening chords of Like a Prayer filled the small hospital room. Madonna walked back to the bed and did something extraordinary. She carefully, so carefully, helped Sarah sit up. She climbed onto the hospital bed next to her, and she began to move, not standing, not the elaborate choreography from her music videos, just sitting on that bed, moving her shoulders, her arms, her hands, creating dance with just the parts of her body that didn't require standing. And then she took Sarah's hands and moved them too, guided them through the air, in time to the music, created shapes and patterns with their intertwined fingers. Sarah's arms were so weak, she could barely hold them up, but Madonna supported them, moved with them, turned their joined hands into a dance. Rachel stood in the corner, filming on her phone through her tears, watching her dying sister dance with Madonna. Sarah was crying and laughing at the same time, moving whatever parts of her body still worked, swaying her shoulders, lifting her arms as much as she could with Madonna's help. It wasn't the dance she'd imagined when she made her wish. It was better because it was real, because Madonna hadn't pitied her or pretended her body wasn't failing. She'd just found a way to make the impossible possible. When the song ended, Madonna didn't let go of Sarah's hands. She looked at this dying woman and said, "You've been dancing your whole life, Sarah. Every time you got back up, after treatment knocked you down, that was a dance. Every time you chose to live one more day, even when dying seemed easier, that was a dance. You're the bravest dancer I've ever met." Sarah couldn't speak. She just held on to Madonna's hands like they were the only solid thing in a world that was slipping away. Madonna stayed for another hour. She sang Live to Tell quietly, just for Sarah. She told stories about her own struggles, her own moments of wanting to give up. She made Sarah laugh, actually laugh, which Rachel hadn't heard in weeks. Before she left, Madonna did one more thing. She took off the bracelet she was wearing, a simple silver chain with a small cross, and put it on Sarah's wrist. "I've worn this for 20 years, Madonna said. "Through every hard thing, through every moment I wasn't sure I'd survive. And I did survive, every time. So I want you to have it, so you know you're not alone, so you know you're loved." Sarah looked at the bracelet, then at Madonna, and whispered, "I'm not going to survive this." Madonna's face crumpled. She pulled Sarah into a hug and said, "I know, baby, but you survived everything else. You survived 6 years that would have destroyed most people. You survived with grace and humor and courage, and when you go, you're going with love. So much love." Rachel walked Madonna to the door. Before she left, Madonna turned back one more time to look at Sarah, and she said, "Thank you for listening to my music. Thank you for letting it mean something to you. That's the greatest gift you could ever give an artist, knowing that something you made mattered." Sarah died 3 weeks later, on November 3, 2019. She was wearing Madonna's bracelet. The last song played in her hospital room was like a prayer. Rachel uploaded the video of Sarah and Madonna dancing to a private YouTube channel, shared only with family and close friends. But one of those friends shared it, and then someone else shared it, and within a week it had gone viral. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of people sharing their own stories about Madonna's music getting them through hard times. Thousands of people crying watching a dying woman dance with her hero. Thousands of people saying the same thing. This is what it means to be human. Madonna never spoke publicly about visiting Sarah. She didn't post about it on social media or use it for publicity. It was a private moment of compassion, not a performance. But 6 months after Sarah died, Madonna dedicated a song during her concert to a brave woman named Sarah, who taught me that dancing isn't about your body, it's about your spirit. Rachel still has the video. She watches it when she misses her sister so much she can't breathe. She watches Madonna move Sarah's weak arms through the air, creating beauty from dying, creating dance from stillness. She watches her sister's face, the joy, the disbelief, the absolute presence in that moment. And she thinks about what Madonna said. You've been dancing your whole life because Sarah had been. Every morning she woke up when waking up was agony. That was a dance. Every treatment she endured when giving up would have been easier. That was a dance. Every moment she chose life, even as life was choosing death. That was a dance. And in the end she got her last dance with Madonna. Not the dance she'd imagined, but the dance she needed. The dance that said, you matter, you're loved, you're seen. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is show up for someone who's dying, not to fix them or save them, but just to sit with them in their final chapter and say, your life mattered, your joy mattered, your struggle mattered, you mattered. Madonna showed up for Sarah, and in doing so she showed all of us what grace looks like, what compassion looks like, what love looks like when there's nothing left to do but love. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they matter. Subscribe for more stories about the moments that define our humanity. And in the comments, tell us what song has carried you through your hardest times. Because music saves us. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, the artist who saved us shows up to say thank you right back.